So I call to order this policy committee meeting on Tuesday, February 16th, 2021. It is 6:04 p.m. And I was going to ask you this before, Mr. Guarino. Did you want to take roll? Did you want to do that still, or do you want me to do it?
You can do it.
I can do it. Okay. That's fine.
3 people here, so.
So Ms. Bishop is here. Mr. Guarino?
I'm here.
Ms. Ziem is not here tonight. Ms. Johnson is here in her stead. Ms. Johnson, are you here?
I'm present. Sorry about that.
That's okay. And we also have Ms. Raymond and Ms. Brown joining us for our conversation tonight, and Mr. Parker and Ms. Bernardo. So welcome, everyone. We have a couple of things on our agenda tonight. The first one is policy BCA, school board member ethics. And Mr. Parker, I was hoping you could talk us through this a little bit.
Sure, and Ms. Bernardo, if you can jump in as well. These are basically administrative policies updated from a few years ago, and slimmed down a little bit to be more consistent in what we actually do, and more uniform, if you will, as well. And I think to some extent in some of these, there were some things that should not have been put in the policy that was corrected and taken out, and we're taking out, quite frankly. And they have some of which have proven to be problematic in the past. And so, again, we want to make our policies user-friendly. We want to make them as clear as possible, and that gives us as much flexibility as possible, even within a set of, clearly defined parameters. And so this is an attempt to do that and to correct some things that we've been wanting to correct for a while. So,
do you want to talk us through some of the corrections?
Well, yes, I'm sure if we can go through, and maybe correction is not the right word, but just beef it up a little bit. So if you go through the first one, school board member ethics, BCA. Do you want me to go point by point, or just let people lift up questions that they had?
I think because there does seem to be a significant amount of changes, maybe you can speak to kind of the redirection of the policy.
Okay. So here, number one in BCA is to really understand the role of the board as a governing body. I'm not going to read it word for word. It's there. I can answer questions to it. But just stating that we set the broad goals, you guys set the broad goals and standards for the district by way of policies. And so you're just making that crystal clear and putting in the right to know law with things allow people can know or not know. Number two, it was just basically make decisions and take votes. That was just missing. So it really wasn't, it was just putting that last major piece in that the board does. You take votes on decisions, and it's just making that explicit. That's number two. The new number three, seek opportunities for the board to establish systemic communications. And that's something that's ongoing, and that's something that we just wanted to, that's part of what your role, we see your role as being, is to seek ways to represent your district, okay? And what are the best ways we can work together to do that, all right? And that's just a stated an explicit fact that we want to memorialize. To skip number four, that's the same. Number six, communicate to the superintendent and to the board as consistent with right to know law, expressions of public reaction to board policies and school programs and other board actions, right? Just, How do we communicate and who does the communicating with whom? Okay, regarding what? 8 is the same, 9 is the same. Number 10, okay, I'll take a moment to read that. Recognize that individual members are without authority to speak or act relative to school district business, and that I, meaning each one of you individually, may not individually commit the board to any action except as specifically designated to do so by board action, or obviously that would be a vote of the board. So no one is an entity unto him or herself, okay, but collectively making a decision by vote, and then proceed from there. Okay, so no individual action apart from the full board considering and deliberating and voting on a matter. 11, pretty straightforward. Understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office per applicable school board policies. Okay, so if there's a school-based issue, we expect that the principal would be alerted and he or she would go through the proper channels. If it's a superintendent issue, okay, he will go through the proper channels to let the assistant supers know, the principals, or whoever needs to be involved, and who's the first point of contact. Okay, and so this asks basically that the board, if something comes to you, and you bring it to the right authorities within the district or building leaders, administration. Number 12, work with the other board members to establish effective board policies and foster a relationship with the district administration toward the effective implementation of those policies and management of the district. It's pretty straightforward. We work together for the betterment of the district, period. Okay, whether that's our program of studies, personnel, and overall policies, shaping the direction of the district. All right, 13 is the same. And for 14, 14 is the same. Okay, that's not a change there. 15, and we changed some of the language in our meeting, and I want to put it before you. So number 15, we would like to read, present personal opinions and other board member comments to the superintendent, period. Okay, so we did work on that earlier, and I did review it with Ms. Kinsella as well before we left this evening. So again, number 15, present personal opinions, criticisms gone, and other board member comments to the superintendent. Concerning district operations, staff, etc., to the superintendent. All right, so you're going to take out not to district staff, the public. That seemed, wordy and unnecessary. So, any questions on that? Okay, and the last one is not changed. Not changed. So, any questions on BCA?
And there are a couple of things that have been taken out, just I'm guessing out of redundance.
Yeah.
Overall, these are policies that we've had the NHSBA start to review for us, and we've started to work with them to get the policies to align more to the NHSBA model guidelines. A lot of things we were missing or needed to add a few words in order to get them closer to their suggested policies that other districts throughout the state also have implemented. A few things here and there, and then at the end, removing the related documents because they don't apply anymore. The link to the district website, that also does no longer exist at this point, and things like that. But really just aligning to NHSBA, and that's going to be the majority of the policies that you see tonight, is working with them to start making that transition change and alignment towards those models.
Okay. So I know we spoke earlier, Mr. Parker, but I did end up with a couple more questions, and I was wondering if we could I have a couple of questions, so hopefully we can answer them. But one of the questions that I had was the additional points in number 2, and then follow up with number 12. So understand that the board as governing body does not manage the district, but rather sets broad goals and standards. My question is, so does not manage the district, but then in number 12, it says the district administration toward the effective implementation of those policies and management of the district operations. So those two seem to be in conflict with each other. We have one point saying that we don't manage the district, we just act as a governing body, which means that we adapt policies.
Mhm.
But then we have that we do manage the district in regards to the implementation of policies.
I think number 12 emphasizes the collaboration
Mhm,
between administration and the board.
mhm.
And so I guess in reading it, I could see that, but say work with the board members to establish effective board policies and foster a relationship. That's the key with the district administration toward the effective implementation of those policies and management of the district operations, personnel, and facilities. So I actually don't see them as exactly the same. One emphasizes the collaboration. The administration does not operate in isolation.
Mhm,
Okay, we do collaborate, we do seek input and advice,
mhm.
and that's how I see number 12. So I don't see it as exactly the same way, but I'm happy to work with the language to make it more distinct from number 2.
Well, I'm wondering we're making it very clear about does not manage the district. Do we want to say something in number 12 that more reflects that board policies and support the district administration toward the effective implementation of those policies?
Okay, sure. You can say work with the other board members to establish effective board policies and support
That,
the district administration toward the effective implementation, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah. Because that, I think it just makes more clear that our policies dictate how the district runs, but it's not us stepping in and doing that for you. So it kind of takes the micromanagement out of it. Yes, Ms. Raymond?
I'm sorry, can you read that again? Because the sentence
Sure.
with the change.
It's number 12. Work with the other board members to establish effective board policies and support the district administration toward the effective implementation of those policies and management of the district operations, personnel, and facilities.
Okay, I like that. So we're taking out the words foster.
We're taking out foster a relationship with.
Okay.
Mhm.
And then on 2, I might suggest adding in the first sentence there, understand that the district as a governing body does not manage the day-to-day operations of the district. And that might help with the difference between manage and govern. Does that make sense? Because we don't manage the day-to-day operations, but it's our responsibility to write the policies, revise the policies that the district then uses to do the day-to-day audit. So I would say, I would add the words day-to-day operations in there.
Okay, so understand that the board as governing body does not manage the day-to-day operations of the district, but rather sets the broad goals and standards, et cetera, et cetera.
Ms. Bishop?
I'm just wondering if we even just strike does not manage the district, because I think when we define what governing body is, governing body clearly states that we're not managing the district, that we're creating the policies. So it's almost
I think we should leave it in there.
Which one, Ray?
Under number 2.
that does not manage the day-to-day.
Right. Because I think that we have to try to set a policy that, where the board has a relationship with the superintendent, where the roles are defined and the superintendent is given his marching orders, so to speak, and then is answers to the board. But the day-to-day operations, I think it should be clear in there that the superintendent manages the district.
Instead of day by day, do we want to say minutia?
I think you're kind of split.
I know,
Fine, or just manage is fine. Day-to-day
I
operations.
think day-to-day is better than minutia.
okay.
Keep in mind too, in your packets, you received the NHSBA model policy. This is word for word what they are recommending.
I know, there were so many, I liked reading those, but there were so many, like, I don't want to say colloquialisms, but it's easy to read, which I wasn't expecting, but I guess that's a good thing. Miss Brown and then Miss Johnson.
I think the addition of day-to-day is good. I actually think that I also would like to consider striking the word broad goals and just make it sets the goals and standards. So take the word broad out if we're just focused on number 2 right now. And I'm actually kind of surprised that the recommendation by the NHSBA was to use the word understand, because I think understand is a little bit, it's not clear. I mean, one person's understanding of something can be different than another person's understanding. So I don't know if there's something that we can edit for that particular word, but I think I actually had it highlighted later in number 11 too, because I thought there was some redundancy between the two things. I was going to strike the whole sentence 11, but we'll get down there.
I have some comments about 11 too, Ms. Brown. How about for 2? The board is a governing body who does not manage the day-to-day, but rather sets the goals.
I like that better.
Could you repeat that, please?
Just the
Are we
board.
Because are we changing this? Because I think it's fine the way it is. I mean, I would like to vote on how it seems like we're changing this as it goes, so I don't know what's being put in and what's not being put in. I think number 2 is fine the way it is, add day-to-day operations. And I think that members of this board need to understand what their role is. And to say that, I think is important. I think the word understand is perfectly fine.
And you know what? This was something that I brought up with Mr. Parker earlier when there was a phrase in there that I was like, that sounds interesting. But when you pair it with the next piece on our agenda, which is our acknowledgement of school board ethics policies, this is, I think, what we're forgetting, and I forgot it, is this is our acknowledgement of our understanding of the ethics. So it's not a set of rules for us, but we're signing away saying that we understand that the board is,
Right.
it's not necessarily definitions and rules, but more of a contract for us. And I think that's where the things like understand and makes decisions and seek are more, we're acknowledging our personal responsibilities within the board.
But isn't that what an agreement is? I mean, if we're signing something and agreeing to it, isn't that what an agreement is? That everybody understands what's going on and we all agree.
Right.
So why?
Right, which is why I think maybe the taking the understand out, maybe we don't necessarily need to do that if it's written like a contract for us.
I don't know.
So I'm agreeing with you, Ray. But it's not clear. Well, each board member shall comply with the following ethical provisions right at the top. So I think
All right, are we still on BCA?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry, you're reading the first line. Sorry about that. Yep.
And Ms. Johnson, you had something next.
Yes, thank you. Because according to the state law, school board has a duty to operate and govern, thus manage each school in its district. So we've got to be consistent with the RSA also. Excuse me, I'm at my son's house, my little granddaughter. I excuse myself for the noise. But you have to be consistent with state laws. And state law, according to state law, a school board has a duty to operate and govern, thus manage each school in its district. So that's what our legislators have put into the law, into an RSA. RSA 189:1. Duty to provide education. So you have to be consistent with that. And I have a problem with a little bit of the languages here and everything. Do we have a provision in number 2? They understand that the board, that in case of an emergency, that something happens with the superintendent. I scribbled on this paper, I'm trying to read it. Emergency conditions, that if we have a problem with the superintendent, that the board might have to seek other duties. So it's, so some of this language just isn't consistent throughout this whole thing. And being that if I don't feel comfortable with this school board members' ethics, I'm not going to be able to sign off on it, because you have to feel comfortable what you're signing off on. So I think being consistent, so we need to have to operate and govern, thus manage each school in its district. So somewhere that has to be in there to be consistent with the RSA. That's on the first one. So we'll just stick with the first one. Thank you.
You're on mute, Jen.
I just said the most brilliant thing I've ever said.
We all missed it.
Shucks. What if we said that understand that the board is a governing body which supports the management of the district by setting broad goals and standards for the district? You don't like that?
No, I think you're losing the grammar.
See, I told you I missed it. I was on mute. I had it perfect before.
Sorry. I think we're thinking too hard about it. This is not the rules about necessarily how the district should be governed. This is just the way that board members ought to conduct ourselves to make sure that we are following best practices and behaving in a way that is ethical.
Mm-hmm.
I would agree with that, Ms. Raymond, but also to Ms. Johnson, to your point, this is from the School Boards Association, and lawyers have seen this. And so these, even the policies, even in the model policies, they have been vetted by legal. Okay. Isn't that correct, Ms. Bernardo?
Yes, they have. They've been vetted by the NHSBA's attorneys as well.
Yep.
May I say something, Ms. Bishop? But you can't go against the RSA. The RSA also dictates what needs to be done. And so thus manage. That's the word that we're getting hung up on, everybody, is that manage word, because of the fact that if you pull out manage, and what happens if we have to manage something, then we can't do it because our policy says we can't do it. So if you manage day-to-day, that we don't manage day-to-day operations, we oversee everything. But again, this is state law. You can't be in conflict with state law. That's the whole thing. So you can ask our legislatures to change all this so we're not in conflict.
Mr. Guarino?
I don't think this is in conflict with state law. If you look at the state law, it says govern. it says govern and manage, and we are managing through governing. So I think it was vetted through the lawyers, and I think they, if you look further on in that statute, you just take something out of context out of the statute. It looks like it's in conflict, but it really isn't, because the school board, I mean, the Board of Education is managing through governing. So we have to be very careful, because if there is an emergency, maybe some of the smaller districts need, if they don't have 9 people on a board, can manage it in an emergency. Maybe that's why it's there in the statute. But in our case, we would get an interim superintendent. So I don't think this is in conflict, and I do agree that it's been vetted through the lawyers for the association.
Thank you. And I see we have our interim superintendent here now. Hello, Dr. McKinney, joining our party. We do have a habit as a board to overthink things, which is fine. Do we want to go back to what the sentence originally stated and just add in, does not manage the day-to-day operations of the district?
I will make a motion to do that.
Okay. What is everyone else? Just a head nod. I mean, we'll get to the end of this. Yes, Dr. McKinney?
I think the intent, the way it's written, is does not manage the district as a whole. The board manages the district through the office of the superintendent. It's not just limited to the day-to-day operations. It includes personnel, budgetary decisions, other decisions that go beyond just the day-to-day normal operations. So the understanding is the relationship between the board and the superintendent, whoever he or she may be, work in conjunction, and the board decides on governance, decides on policy, decides on the budget, and works in partnership with the superintendent. I hope that's helpful.
I think it's at number 12 on this first page.
Yeah, that's where it clearly states that.
I'm not on the committee, but if I could add to Mr. Guarino's motion, can we also take the word broad out? That was mostly my only problem with that whole sentence.
I don't mind that.
I have no problem in that.
Okay.
Take out the word broad.
Okay, so Mr. Guarino had made a motion for it. That means that either you, Ms. Bishop, or Ms. Johnson ought to second it and then vote. Because Ms. Brown and I are just here.
Well, I'm having
grammar.
I'm having second thoughts about my motion. I would like to withdraw it because I think, as Dr. McKinney said, it's more than just day-to-day operations. So I think we should go back to the original sentence and just take out broad goals and say goals. So I would move to leave the sentence as it is and just take out the word broad in front of broad goals. I don't think we need day-to-day operations. But if nobody seconds it.
Well, no, I'm not seconding it, because I feel like when we're at the end of this, we can just take it as amended. I think we're all agreeing. That's the sense I'm getting on that sentence.
Well, it's up to you and your committee if you want to approve each change as you do it, or make lots of changes and then approve them all at the end.
I like
Or
the
no
idea of changes and just doing one big one at the end. But I'm looking to my committee members to see if they enjoy that idea as much as I do.
I think we ought to, I think we ought to go down the list and look at each one individually and then vote on them, each change. And I think we ought to accept it the way it is, unless we have problems with it. Like I have, maybe each of us on the committee can offer the changes that we want, and then we'll vote on those. And I mean, I have no changes except number 2, where I would take out the word broad. I would change the title to Board of Education Member Ethics rather than School Board Member, because we're not a school board, we're a Board of Education. And the other one is number 10. I would take out the word I, that I may not individually commit, and just put the word each. Those are the only 3 changes I have. And I would support approving this the way it is with Mr. Parker's changes on number 15, where he changed criticisms to opinions, and those changes that he had there.
Does anyone have anything to add to that? Ms. Raymond?
I do. So on number 10, as Mr. Guarino said, I also had just had each member instead of I, because the grammar is better than just I.
Yep, that's good. Yep.
Yeah, so each member, so it makes sense. But then on number 4, I struggle with number 4, because it says seek opportunities for the board to establish systematic communications with students, staff, and members of the community. I feel like our job, based on number 2 and the law, is that we create policies and even protocols to a certain extent to create those opportunities, as opposed to just saying we're going to seek the opportunities. So I would just say we establish policies and protocols for systematic communications with students, staff, etc. Other than that, I don't have any other quibbles that haven't been addressed.
Can you repeat what you said, Heather?
Yeah, on number 4, I crossed out from seek opportunities for the board to establish.
Mm-hmm.
And I replaced it with establish policies and protocols for. I don't have strong feelings about it. I just thought I'd throw it out there since I showed up at your meeting. Dr. McKinney has his hand raised though, and so did
Yeah, I saw.
Paula, so maybe I have it wrong.
Dr.
Well, I
McKinney?
just want to say that number 4, I concur with Mrs. Raymond. We have the communication audit back, and I think it's going to be essential for the district to establish policy procedures and some communication guidelines around how, when, and where we communicate and who takes on certain messages. I think there are challenges with misinformation and trying to find some ways to use social media to our benefit. So I do think that is an important change that Ms. Raymond's suggesting. Thanks.
And I'm not suggesting that we limit people's First Amendment rights. I'm just suggesting that I'm just thinking about our training with the School Board Association and how some boards say, we're gonna, assign one member the role of responding to most of the emails that come in instead of 9 members responding, or we're gonna assign one person the job of forwarding stuff to the superintendent or the assistant superintendents. I don't know if we want to do that on our board, but it's something we maybe want to think about. So anyways, thinking down the road and how our ethical guidelines here, as we're agreeing to them, how that would influence our behavior. So.
Ms. Johnson? And then Ms. Brown?
Thank you. So are we going through this whole thing, or are we just taking one at a time yet?
I feel like we're
Are we-
going one at a time, but it does bleed into other notes. So, but I think we are going one at a time.
So are we just going by the numbers, or can I just throw in what I have right now? Because I've been reading and kind of going through all this where I find that I have some concerns.
Yes, go ahead. And then at the end, I'll just go over kind of what edits we've put in. Does that make
Okay.
sense?
Yep. Number 7, be informed about current educational issues by individual study and through information, such as those sponsored by the State of Nashua School Board Association. I'm not going to bank everything on that. So I'm not, that to me is like irrelevant. I think number 7, I don't think that's an ethical thing, basically. So I couldn't care if that was taken out. But number 10, I don't like the word "I" in there. Recognize that individual members are without authority to speak or act relative to school district business, and that a board member may not act individually, may not individually commit the board to any action except specifically designated to the board as a whole. The board as a whole has the authority. So that I really should be a board member.
So I think,
And-
We changed that already.
yeah,
Okay,
Heather and Ray
Okay.
wanted it changed to each member. may
Okay,
not
and
individually.
Also, because I didn't put the change, I've got this whole thing so scribbled up here.
Me
And
too.
also, the board does not have any authority except as a whole, and that's a very important piece. As a whole. Number 11, understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office per applicable school board policies. So I guess part of my problem is, we know in the past, parents have gone to board members anonymously because they're afraid of retaliation. So what happens if a complaint comes into a board member? We have to do the chain of commands, but we can't give out the information because the parents are afraid. So I think we need to have something in there talking about if we get an anonymous complaint, what are we going to do? Or we know if the parent comes to a board member and says, I'm really afraid of this, and here's my complaint, but I don't want it to be seen by a certain person. I know there's a chain of command for everything, but sometimes these chain of commands, don't work all the time. So I'm concerned with that on number 11. I think the wording probably needs to be a little bit better.
Hey, sorry, Ms. Johnson, what do you think of this? Because I also had the same thing.
Okay.
What if and what do you guys think of this, is adhere to administrative and district roles and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office per applicable school board policies?
Yeah, say it again.
Adhere to administrative and district roles and refer problems that way.
Yeah,
Mr. Guarino?
I think if a board member has a complaint and the parents want to remain anonymous, you can still tell administration about the problem. The parent or whoever just remains anonymous. So the problem has still been communicated. The person wants to remain anonymous, so no one knows who it is, but the administration is aware of it. Maybe they can do something. With the information they have, they might not be able to do anything with the, because it's anonymous, or they might be able to do something if it's anonymous. Depends on the situation, but whether it's anonymous or not, and there's a complaint, it should probably still go to the administration.
Mr. Parker or Dr. McKinney, do you have anything to help us out with this?
Well, I'll be honest with you, I like number 11 as it is. I think it's just easy to understand. Understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office. I mean, if you wanted to leave it there, or if you wanted to use adhere, I could go with adhere as well. But I think I wouldn't do wholesale changes to this myself, but I mean, I'll do whatever you would like us to do. Okay, Mr. Bishop, can you say the beginning part of your sentence again?
Who, mine?
Yes.
I just said adhere to the administrative and district roles. Because I think with chain of command, sometimes you do have to jump things depending on what's going on. But there are policies in place for that.
Right, but I don't know if we have to be explicit in a policy about that, because that will happen. That hopefully that'll be the exception and not the rule, because there is a chain of command and people will adhere to administrative roles. So I don't think we have to try and tailor, just respectfully, my view, each policy to every possible potential situation that could happen, especially if it's an outlier. All right, you work in a school district, a dynamic school district, that's going to happen. Okay, but the policies act as a guide. Okay, a guide and offers us some flexibility, and so.
So just to throw it out there, we have policies KE and KEB that talk about complaints and tell us specifically what to do with them. So if, depending on who's making the complaint and what the complaint is about, where it should go. So that's helpful. I think the intent of this policy is to prevent situations and situations that this district has experienced in the past where an anonymous parent will say something to a board member and then the board member will launch an investigation on their own by heading down to the school and starting to talk to teachers and principals, or will bring it up at a board meeting and want it to be investigated or treated as truth. And neither of those is the ethical way to handle it. The ethical way to handle it is, whether it's anonymous or not, would be to bring it to the lowest person appropriate. So whether that's, the principal, if it's a complaint about a teacher, or the assistant superintendent, if it's a complaint about a principal, if it's a complaint about how we as a district do something, then maybe it's something to discuss with the superintendent, and maybe it does need to be an agenda item, but it ought to go as low as possible first. Does that make sense? But I know we're not the only district that's had board members decide that they'll just check it out on their own and interrupt the operations of the district and ruffle lots of feathers that way. So both versions, I like the grammar of though, so that's really.
Well, how it's written now is how it's written in the NHSBA policy.
Yeah. I mean, if we're talking about the difference between this is us agreeing that we'll follow these ethical guidelines versus policies telling us what to do with the complaints. Like, do you know what I mean?
Right.
This is just a broad overview. You're a brand new board member. You're just getting an idea of what you're supposed to, how you're supposed to behave. You're supposed to read this and sign off that you have read it and that you're agreeing to follow these general guidelines for your behavior.
Right.
And then when you have a question about something, you go and look it up. Well, I have this complaint. I don't know what to do with it. You ask. So.
Yes, Ms. Johnson?
Thank you. So now I'm going to go on to number 15.
Oh, wait, can I?
Okay.
Sorry. For 11, are we keeping it as is? Because that's what I felt like the consensus was.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Mr. Parker, which one do you like best?
I like it as it originally was. Understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office.
Okay.
And, on that, you can see, you can put on there reference to 2 other board policies on there too. With that. So if anybody has any questions, we know where you can reference for those chain of commands.
So I actually wouldn't reference them just because if additional policies are added or changed, then we would have to come back and change this one as well. So if we keep it.
You could just amend this policy to reflect that number 11, actually.
We could, but someone will have to remember to do that. Ms. Brown?
I just want to clarify, if I have changes to this, do you want me to give them all at once? Or are you going to go, so you're not going item by item in editing. So should I spill out what I would like some things to change? Hold on, I think Miss Bishop's camera's off.
Oh, you lost me. I didn't hear anything that you said.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, your screen is empty. So I just wanted to clarify for, since I'm not voting tonight, but I do have some ideas for some changes to this document. Do you want me to just spill them all out now, or are we doing line by line, or item by item? Item by item. All right.
Item by item.
So could I skip, if you guys are done talking about 11, I'd actually like to skip back to 10. Because then I have comments on 10, 11, 12, 13, and 15.
Okay, so let's go over 10. Ms. Johnson?
Okay, when she's done, I just have number 15 and 16 on my list, okay?
Okay, so we'll just go point by point, and whenever we have something to add, we'll throw it in at that line.
Perfect, thank you.
So, Ms. Brown, what was your 10 comment?
So for 10, and actually I had I actually had something written down for 7 too. All right, so I'll say 10, I'll skip back to 7, I apologize. So if you guys would consider, recognize that individual members have no authority relative to school district business, and that each may not individually commit the board to any action except for a specifically designated to do so by a vote of the board as opposed to board action. I think that clarifies that it's a majority by a majority vote. So in that case, that would just be, so if the board has voted to designate someone to sign a document, for example.
Mm-hmm. I had the same thing about board action, Jess, or Ms. Brown.
Mm-hmm. It's all right. You can call me whatever.
Hey, you.
Ms. Brown, could you read your first sentence again?
Recognize that no individual members, recognize that individual members have no authority relative to district business, and that each may not individually commit the board to action except as specifically designated to do so by a vote of the board.
Okay, I have it. Thank you.
You're welcome. So I don't really think I think it just clarifies a little bit better. So if you guys would consider that, skipping back to 7, where it says be informed about current educational issues by individual study. And then I was thinking this could be kind of to speak to Ms. Johnson's point, through individual study and through presented information, period. Because I'm probably, if we're presented information from the district personnel, they are going to reference things from different associations or federal, state, local guidelines. So it would clarify, it would just make it a little more concise.
Sorry, which number is that, Ms. Brown?
Number 7, be
Okay.
informed about current educational issues by individual study and through presented information, period.
The only thing that I have concerns about with that is I think critical thinking happens when we're presented information that's outside of what we normally think. So if we're just giving presented information, that kind of removes our thinking from it.
Well, that's why I was leaving in the individual study part.
Right.
So individual studies where our information that we might look outside and I don't know, but that was just a suggestion to make it more concise and also take out the specified information about boards, associations. Because it could be they may be bringing us information that has to do with something they learned from a professional development or some kind of skills there. So I don't know. I just basically the information that's provided us by the district, but that's again, I don't really have a really strong opinion about it. And then, so did you want me to stop there and then wait until you guys move to the next ones?
Yeah.
All right.
Mr. Parker, what do you think about what Ms. Brown said for number 7?
I'm fine with that.
Ms. Johnson?
Yeah, I just wanted, when we're saying here, being informed about the current educational information individual, we need to say presented information only. So we want to make sure it's presented to us. We want it in our hands. Because, we've got everything. We keep getting stuff from associations and, we're reading stuff here from the School Board Association. And that doesn't mean that everything is correct here, what they say. Again, you can't be in conflict with state law. And even though they're saying that we're not, we've got that RSA in front of us. So there's a couple of changes that Ms. Brown has made, but on that one, and I just want to go back to number 10 a little bit. I guess I'm done with number 7, if everybody else is done with number 7.
Well, Mr. Parker's saying that he is okay with Ms. Brown's edit. So information period, Jess?
Yeah, or you could say presented information or information presented. It doesn't matter. I don't think it matters.
Well, I'm just to play devil's advocate here. It's not presented to me. I feel like it's what's being given to us in regards to board meetings. So what comes in our packets, what is being shown to us.
Has to be presented.
But also presented information is like, the New Hampshire School Board Association information that we have access to help us make decisions in regards to policies. That's not necessarily presented information, but it's available information that we should be using when we're making informed decisions.
So you can change it to prevented and available information for us, because if you want to, whichever way you want to play with the words.
I like that, Ms. Johnson. What if we said by the presented and available information,
Make informed decisions.
but that we have to like pay into the New Hampshire School Board, like we buy into that.
Do we have to buy in? I mean, the question is, do we have to become part of it? Do we have to buy into it? I mean, are there other means for us to get all this information without a cost factor behind it? Because I don't want to have to put this in writing and then, we can find other ways. of obtaining the information. And I just have to ask a question here. I know we're doing a lot of work on this.
Mhm.
And are we really going to vote on all this? Because we're going to have to read off everything without seeing it and making sure that it's written out properly tonight. Is this something that's imperative that has to make our next school board meeting, or can it be the meeting after? Because this is a lot to digest tonight and all these changes.
Let's reevaluate that at the end, because it may end up being just a couple of changes after we've talked it to the extent that we are. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because really, we've talked a lot about things and we've really only changed like 4 words.
Can I,
Guarino?
I just want to give you my opinion on number 7.
Mm-hmm.
I think we have to look at what the intent was. There's a history behind everything. And it looks to me like they were asking members of the board to be informed on the practices, best practices, things that are happening in other places, and what other school board, what are other school boards and other boards of education and other districts doing. So I think they were saying that the members should be informed about current issues, but and that's through individual study. That is, each of us go out on our own and look at things, but also through programs or information such as, and that's the key right there, such as sponsored by national and school board associations. So it's not saying that we have to go through the whatever's sponsored by state and national school boards associations, saying look for those best practices, look what's happening in education and the current issues, and be informed about that. So I think we're kind of overthinking these things about information. So I think basically the way it is fine with me. I don't think we need to change it. That's my feelings on it, because I think that's what it says and that's what it means.
Mr. Parker?
Yeah, I would recommend that we simply state, and here I just want to say again, I think 2 things: less is more and simple is best. All right, and so we want, we want to get accurate wording, but I think, we want to get the gist of the intent of what's behind a certain policy. So number 7, I would say be informed about current educational issues by individual study and through presented and available information, period. Because that gets at what you want. We don't have to mention the school board, state school boards. Okay, we put it in there, but it doesn't have to be in there. Okay, and it doesn't preclude us getting information from those entities or any place else, whether it's through a presentation, a Zoom meeting, however we get it, it's covered. It's covered.
Yeah.
All right. So however the information is presented to us, the assumption is it's relevant and it's for us or you. It's not us. Forgive me, for you to consider. All right. And so I think we're covered.
Okay. We good? Do we want to keep talking about 7? Okay. We did 8, we did 9, we did 10. Did you want to say something on 10, Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we read the changes, please, on that? So we
I
did.
have that recognize that no individual member has the authority to speak or act relative to school district business, and that each member may not individually commit the board to any action except as specifically designated to do so by a vote of the board.
Okay, I think what I said before, the board only has authority as a board of the whole.
Right, by a
Because
vote
what-
of the board. So once the vote happens, it is a vote of the board. Whether people agree or not.
Right, but it should somewhere state that the authority comes as the board of a whole. That means the whole board has the authority. You know, it kind of just clarifies everything so people understand. The board as a whole is the authority. I mean, that's just the way I always was told, and all the wording that we always had
Mhm.
was the authority comes from the board as a whole.
So you wanted to say, except as specifically designated to do so by a vote of the board by the whole. Vote of the board. Vote by the board of a whole. What?
The board only it's really that the board only has power as the board of a whole. You know, so you all has to be together. You have, so, okay, it's just basically saying not one individual person, but it just clarifies that whole thing.
Right.
That the
So
board
doesn't
has
this-
the power.
You had said earlier to do so by a majority vote of the board.
Majority, the board of the whole.
Okay, to do so by a majority vote of the board. Sorry, my internet cut out again.
It's
Mr.
all
Green.
good.
Did Mr. Guarino say, did anybody hear me ask Mr. Guarino if he liked it?
I think it says the same thing. If you say
That's okay.
by board action or say by a vote of the board or the board of the whole, it sounds like it's all the same thing to me.
It should be board of the whole.
But I think we should say board action because rather than go say vote of the board or board of the whole, if you have committees doing things and individuals on committees doing things and they shouldn't, that's board action because it's action by the committee. You say you need a vote of the board of the whole for each individual to speak or act, then it's technicality. I'm splitting hairs here, but I see no reason why we just can't use board by board action. To me, it says the same thing as a vote of the board or the board of the whole. But board action is more general. So if you have a committee and you have individuals acting on that committee and it's okay with everybody, then someone could kind of make a technicality with some of the wording here. So, but I don't care. I honestly don't. I honestly have no problem with changing it the way you want to change it.
What do you think, Paula?
It doesn't matter as long as we get that message straight across. And
Mr. Parker, what do you
What our
think?
intent is.
I think the message comes across.
Okay,
I think this achieves what Ms. Johnson is saying, and so I think we're there.
okay. Shall we move on to 11? I feel like did we have anything to add to that? We're just going to do understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office per applicable school board policies. We're just sticking with the original. Is that what we decided?
I like it.
Paula?
I'm not crazy about it. But I think that we should probably reference the policy so we have it there. So if anybody asks, we have it at our fingertips.
Can we do an asterisk at the end of that and then put at the bottom of the policy, like as of 2021, these are the related policies?
There shouldn't be a reason why we can't.
I don't like the idea of cross-referencing policies because then if we change one, we have to change the other, right? And that's challenging to keep track of. So at the bottom, it will have whatever state law is applicable. And then we have Google, and we also have our website, and it's real easy to find out if something that comes across a new board member's desk needs to be, looked at with policy, or they can ask the president, or they can ask an administrator. There's a lot of resources out there for new board members, other than this one piece of paper that we're asking them to sign.
Well, can I say something? Because if you look at the paper here, it referenced everything. So I guess there was a reference here one time, because it says all Nashua School District employees are subject to blah, 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 blah. Sections 5-93 through 505, chapter 5. For the convenience of the district employment, a link of guidelines can be found in the district website. Related documents, City of Nashua City Ordinance, chapter 5, conduct regulations, school board member ethics. And it did give the different policies on
Right.
this one.
There was a reason why they took that out, was because the policies don't always stay from year to year. So I don't care, I'm not on the committee, but.
I just think
Sorry,
it's a little bit easier.
Ms. Brown.
Thank you. I do think that in this case, it may be appropriate. I like your idea of adding the asterisk and referencing the policies, as it was part of the previous educational policy. They did have that in there. And actually they have something even at the bottom of the revision note from 2018 about the updated spring BCA board ethics. And then also, it also says at the very bottom of this thing from the paper, it says, see also appendix BCAR. So I think it is not unheard of to reference other policies within what it pertains to, especially since we're talking about signing a document, and we can say, hey, if you're questioning what this is, go read this chapter of our bylaws or whatever it is that we're talking about. Because my thought actually, when I initially read that sentence was, when we're talking about chain of command, I felt like we almost needed like an addendum somewhere on there that had a flow chart or something like that. But you could also just as easily do that by your suggestion of adding an asterisk and referencing the chain of command policy.
The only thing that I'm struggling with, because I hear what you and Ms. Johnson are saying, and I would agree to a point. The point that I don't agree to is if it does change, and this is something that we're signing and agreeing to, that we are agreeing that we don't need to look any farther than those two policies when referencing our ethics, when it could in fact bleed into other areas. And when we kind of narrowly put in those citations, we could possibly be preventing people from taking a larger look at things. I think I think one of the things that we're supposed to do ethically is to take a peek at all of the policies and know kind of where everything is, so that when we run into issues like this, we can either ask somebody where we need to look or we know where to look ourselves. But I think we're just kind of painting ourselves into a corner.
So I've actually got a quick fix for you. Take out the word applicable. It's fixed. Then it's just per school board policies.
I like it.
Good, because I was going to say policies subject to change, which would be the same basic thing. So,
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay. Mr. Parker, what do you think of that?
Lovely. So understand the chain of command and refer problems or complaints to the proper administrative office per school board policies. I think that's perfect.
Okay. And then that does kind of put the onus on each of the member to look where they're supposed to. All right, well, it's 7:15. We're on number 12 of the first policy out of 4. Just letting y'all know that. Let's finish this up and reassess. Maybe we do board member ethics and then the appendix that goes along with it. If we can commit to sticking to another half an hour for the other 2, let's do that. If we think we're going to bleed over into more time, let's just put the last 2 on the next agenda. But I'm just throwing that out there now. We'll address it when we're done with this policy. So do we want to go on to number 12? Does anybody have anything to change or add for that? We already changed work with the other. Am I frozen?
No.
Oh, no one was looking at. No, I'm just kidding. So work with other board members to establish effective board policies and support the district administration for the effective implementation of those policies and management of the district operations, personnel, and facilities. Did we want to change anything else in that? That was one of the earlier on edits we did. Okay. Number 13, we had started talking about board actions up in number 10. Did you guys want to make the same changes in regards to recognize the final board actions will be supported? Did we want to say recognize the final majority board vote?
I think it means the same thing.
It
Board
does
action.
mean the same thing. I'm just thinking sticking with the consistency of the wording.
I would agree that I think that having by a vote of the board is important.
The majority vote of the board, just to keep it the same. Bueller? You're on mute, Heather.
Right, where are you changing it to? The very last letters, the very last words?
No, I think all of the board action are just going to be switched to majority vote of the board.
That doesn't make sense because you can't say a majority vote. Well, I would say board motions on the first one. Recognize that final board motions or that approved motions or something along that lines. You know what I mean? Approved board motions will be supported by all members of the board, which means just FYI, even if you didn't vote for it, you can't badmouth it afterwards.
Right.
And I think that's why they use board actions instead of majority votes because it's wordy and cumbersome. So I think if you were going to say that, I would say recognize that and some of them are a super majority. It doesn't matter.
I should, you know, I did speak with Mrs. Ziem this afternoon about this particular one, and she and I both, I think, I don't know, I shouldn't speak for her. I agree. I think that we walk a fine line with that, with number 13 in general, in that, in how we represent our support, because just because I do not think that the board members should take action to compromise, I believe in that part of the sentence, what the board has decided by a majority. However, there are times when individuals may not believe or agree with what the rest of the board has chosen. And I do not think we can stomp on people's individual rights to voice their opinion against that issue. So I do think that that is something, and I think that all of us would feel that way. We've all had things that we voted no against. And I'm not saying we should, you know, I think the intent of this is to say, hey, we shouldn't rehash something we just rehashed last month because we voted on it. We should stick with it, as opposed to, hey, you have to go out and promote something that you don't believe in, or a curriculum that you're against, or an injustice that you think has been done. I don't think that is a good policy.
I think you're talking two different things here. You're talking about, this talks about actions and compromising what the board has done in its action. So the board has a vote and it takes actions, and if you're talking about speaking your mind, or the board does something you don't agree with and you say you don't agree with it, you didn't really take an action to compromise what the board has done. So I think you're talking about, I don't think this infringes on anyone's rights to free speech.
So
But-
that's actually, Mr. Guarino, I don't mean to interrupt, but that's actually, you're saying it more concisely than I did.
Yep.
I think the part of the sentence that is important is take no private action that will compromise the board or administration. I think that should stay there. I think we should remove the part will be supported by all board members, because supporting something is different than not taking action against it. Does
Right.
that make sense? And I think almost this sentence works against itself.
No, I think you're right about that part of it. Yeah.
I think so. Do you think that that stands on its own, or do you think that you need to put, recognize that final board actions are, I don't know, or respect final board actions, and then,
Right. I think instead of supported, say respect the final board's actions.
I think that's a better choice of words.
Yeah.
because that doesn't hinder you saying at a board meeting, I disagree. You all knew I was going to disagree because I voted against it. I still disagree, but it stops you from going around, say, the board to, like, you know, get the commissioner of education on board and say, hey, this board did something. And, you know, I don't know how you would undermine
Or suing, or having a lawsuit, or
yeah.
instigating lawsuits, or something like that.
Again, these are our best practices, right? And I don't think that they fit every single situation that we could think of.
Right.
So.
So we're just changing recognize to respect.
Support to respect.
So yeah, change recognize to respect.
Recognize.
That final board actions will be supported.
I
No,
think
I would
it's
just
change supported to respect.
Yeah.
Recognize that final actions will be respected by all board members.
Okay, hold on. Respect that will be respected. Panel members. Yeah, that's it. Moving along. Mr. Parker, Dr. McKinney, what do you think of that? Okay,
I just want to make sure I have it right. Respect.
recognize that final board actions will be respected by all members.
Gotcha.
That's just like professional decorum. Do we have to write out? We're on to number 14. Do we have any comments, questions, concerns?
Can I just jump in there and say that I would like to not be respectful? No, just kidding.
We'll get you a whiteboard.
Yeah, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, so I like 14. I'm good with it. No changes. Making my own note. And then we're sticking with 15, which Mr. Parker presented to us, which is present personal opinions and other board member comments concerning district operations to the superintendent.
Wait, what?
Well,
That's not what it says on my sheet.
It's not, because we already changed it.
Oh, I missed it.
Oh, Heather.
I'm sorry. I got all the other ones. Say it again.
present personal opinions and other board member comments concerning district operations, staff, etc., to the superintendent, period.
Mm.
So is the remaining not to district staff, the public, or unnecessarily at a board meeting being removed as well?
That's how we had it, yeah.
Yeah, so we end that statement at superintendent. That's the recommendation.
I will say this. This is an ethical policy, and I think it can be very divisive when people are getting on the soapbox and criticizing the superintendent or the way the district is doing things without having tried to solve the issue through proper channels first, or made motions to, change or modify what they think is wrong. I also think that there are always going to be board members who bring their soapbox. So,
I never bring mine.
best of luck with that.
I think the reason I was leaning towards just ending at the superintendent is if it's a concern or an opinion that we think rises to the level that the board needs to address it, if it's addressed with the superintendent, it can then go on the agenda. And then it can be addressed publicly and within board meetings. Yes, Ms. Brown?
Thank you. So my initial thought on this was just to strike it entirely as an addition. I think that I understand that we need the need for decorum, and I think that that's addressed in 14. However, our job is to recognize things. Sometimes it's to praise what's going on in the district and champion it. Oftentimes it is to recognize criticisms and critiques of the district. And yes, I agree that they should be brought to the superintendent, but there may be also times that they need to be brought to the board. I think that this particular item is generalized in what our job is. We addressed earlier in the one we talked about for a long time, 12 or something, that was we should be doing things through the chain of command. We addressed that we should be displaying courtesy and decorum and hopefully not making personal insults to people when it talks about personal opinions. However, we all bring a unique perspective to the board when we are elected. And so I kind of feel like if you want to go to the letter of the law to enforce this policy, it kind of ties our hands in bringing forth any kind of criticism.
Well, if we're not going to get to it tonight because it's already 7:30, but in the agenda preparation and dissemination policy, BEDB talks about how we bring things onto the agenda so we can address them either through new business or as an item. And I think if we're going to be productive with our opinions and comments and criticisms, it's best to get them on the agenda, because then we can address it as a board. And then we can make motions and all that fun stuff. So it is, it exists. I'm trying to read your face. You're not even giving me a face.
I'm getting better at poker every day.
But what do we think of? I mean, if the purpose is to have.
Well, I'm not on the committee. I'm just telling you what I think.
But
I do think, and I have lots of. The only reason I tuned in was actually to talk about the agenda proposal. So we haven't even got to the one I'm interested in yet.
Paula, Ray, what do you think about a hard stop after superintendent?
Yeah, I think that's fine. Present personal opinions and other broad member comments concerning district operations staff to the superintendent. I don't see anything wrong with that. I think it was a good idea to add what you took out, because in this way it prevents chaos. I think the purpose of this was to prevent individuals on the board to go around the superintendent, go around administration, and kind of hassle district staff, you know. But I think it's fine the way you had with the hard stop behind superintendent.
Well, Dr. McKinney, how would you like this kind of stuff brought up?
Again, the superintendent is the board's main employee. So whether there are criticisms, complaints, all those should go to the superintendent. And I think the spirit behind this is to not, in public, single out an employee who's not doing well or unnecessarily bring up business at a board meeting that can be handled by the purview of the superintendent. So it's saying, and certainly, everybody has their opinions about how things should be done, and you should share that with the superintendent, whether good, bad, or indifferent.
Ms. Johnson?
But the superintendent works for the Board of Ed. So the Board of Ed really has the final say over the superintendent. I am concerned a little bit that it would give the superintendent inordinate control of the district, that we're going to just give it to him or her. I want to make sure that, we work with the superintendent hand in hand, but we are the employer of the superintendent. So we've got to make sure that the superintendent reports to us most of the time, that we don't report to him. We work with the superintendent for the agendas to make sure that the district flows properly, that things get done. But at the end of the day, the superintendent works for the Board of Ed. So I want to make sure that's very clear in there. I don't know how you word it, but I want to make sure it's clear in there. But the board really has the final say on a lot of things. And I'm no mean to micromanage, but if there's an issue that comes up, the superintendent sometimes has to bring it to us, and then we have to meet and try to clean up some things. So
I
I see Dr.
I think that's what makes sense.
Dr. McKinney, sorry.
Go ahead, Dr. McKinney, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm in agreement with you, Ms. Johnson. I totally understand the board's purview and responsibilities and power and authority. But at the same time, the superintendent is the CEO of the district. And just like at a bank or a hospital, a board would not single out an employee for doing good, bad, or indifferent, or bring things up in a public meeting when it hasn't been addressed through the CEO or the president of a company. So the board holds the superintendent accountable by their evaluation, should have regular meetings, should have regular updates, know about any legal challenges, any financial challenges. And that's just like we ask all our supervisors, administrators, directors to supervise their employees. The board's responsibility is to manage, supervise, hire, and fire the superintendent. That's one of the primary responsibilities of the Board of Education.
And the way I'm looking at this is from a, to make it even smaller, is I wouldn't send my kids to school and tell them they don't need to listen to their teachers anymore because I don't agree with what their teacher's teaching them. I think in order for us to prevent insubordination is we have to support the superintendent and the motions and policies that we've created. So if we're keeping our opinions and criticisms about the district to the superintendent, it doesn't undermine their ability to manage their staff.
Yep, that makes sense.
I mean, we can politically, because we are elected officials, say if we agree or disagree with some sort of policy, but we can't buy into chaos by allowing people to be disrespectful and to speak disrespectfully about what's going on. Dr. McKinney?
I'll just say one last thing. I've been in the midst of an interview process, and people have seen how conversations have happened at the board level and removed their application. So if you were to play this out, that's what we don't want to have happen. We don't want to have an employee who makes a mistake and receives feedback in public. We'd rather do that in private and coach and support the employee so they feel like they can, yeah, just like kids, they make a mistake, learn from it, and we're moving on.
Yep. Yes, Ms. Brown?
Sorry, I actually was just going to let you guys finish this part of it, but is this specifically meant to actually be personnel instead of personal?
No, I think it's personal.
Okay.
Because personnel would, I mean, that you would follow the chain of command that we've already discussed in number 12.
Right. That's what I was saying in reference to a teacher.
And I think it's
publicly, and I would never hope. I would hope that all of us would never do that to someone.
right. And I think it's partly getting to the different hats that we wear. So mom hat Heather might have a problem with one of my children's teachers. It would be entirely inappropriate for me to bring that up at a board meeting versus going to the principal first or whatever. So, I mean, it goes to that. Or even if mom Heather hates the way that Elm Street is doing everything, like, you know what I mean? I need to not take my personal feelings about things to the board when I can just sit down with Dr. McKinney about any issues that I might feel.
So hard stop after superintendent, we all like it?
Yeah.
We can all live with it? Okay. Number 16. I have no markings on it. Does anybody else? Looks good as it is. Ms. Johnson?
You know, I guess my question is, and I've been on the boards before, and the question becomes, you know, no board member of the Nashua district shall accept any gratuity, gift, or favor that might impair or appear to influence professional decisions or actions. And I have never put this aside, and I felt this when I was on the board, this board, the Board of Aldermen, and even after I left the board, and I've always said, and when people take contributions, donations from any special interest groups, that the question becomes, is a vote influenced by that? So I think in that, when it looks like that, when you're talking about special interest money, it clearly comes down on that piece here. So, you know, I guess it's either you put in their special interests or you take that whole thing out, because I'm probably the only one on the board that didn't take anything. And it's not good. So that's just my opinion. No board member of the school district shall accept any gratuity, gift, or favor, because if you get a gift, anything above a certain amount, you have to send in the paperwork anyway in the city to show that you got a gift, I believe.
Are you conflating contributions to a political campaign with gifts to an individual board member?
Because you can get them during the year too, probably. You know, I just look at all this as a conflict of interest, no matter how you shake and bake it. You know, it is always a conflict of interest. So,
I
but
feel
at
like-
the end of the year, you have to fill out a form anyway
Right.
with the city if you take any gifts. So if a special interest gave you a gift in the middle of the year, that would be a gift or anything like that. That would be underneath that too. It would also, you would have to show it.
But isn't there a difference between, and I'm not defending taking gifts and stuff, but isn't there a difference between a donation to your political campaign, which is not you, it's typically, it's got a separate, like an IRS number that's not you, et cetera, that's specifically used for political campaigning purposes versus a gift to you as a person? Because, I mean, it costs money to run for office and buy signs and stuff. And if we don't allow people to take donations to their political campaigns, we're eliminating anybody who doesn't independently have the money to spend hundreds of dollars on signage, et cetera.
Well, you don't have to have a number to run a campaign, unless, I don't even think if you run for mayor, you have to have it. You just have to file your paperwork and make sure how the money is spent, because you have to show all your expenses and you have to have a fiscal agent. The other thing is here, during the year, any political union or anybody else can give you money during the year as a gift. And if it's over, I believe, $10, I think it was in the past, I could be wrong right now, you have to fill out the paperwork showing what you've gotten during the years from any part. So it could be a special interest, it could be a political party that they gave you during the year. I'm just making the point that it's just out there, you know, and that we want to avoid any conflicts of interest as best as we can as elected officials when we are making any and all decisions on voting on anything here. That's what my biggest thing is. And I've said it all along, even when I was non-elected, I've gone in and read people who've taken things during the year. So it could be a gift of a basket of fruit. It's still a gift and you've got to report it. That's all I'm saying. It's the appearance. So.
Mr. Guarino?
Yeah, I agree with Ms. Raymond that there's a difference between political contributions and what this is talking about here, which is gifts. The Supreme Court actually said that giving money to someone when they're running for office is free speech. So money is free speech. And that was a Supreme Court decision. So I think we're talking two different things here. At this level, I think any money that's given to any campaign, any person running for this board is usually given at the time of election. It's not given during the year. I don't think anybody gets any money during the year from anyone. It's usually around the campaign time, and it's actually for the campaign. It's not the same as getting a gift for getting votes or whatever. So I think there's a big difference here. And so I think it's fine the way it is. I think the number 16 is perfectly fine. And I think people know to stay in their lane. And when it's election time, they take contributions within the law for their campaign. And I don't think there's any skewing of the lines here.
Okay, I think this is something we're probably gonna just have to agree to disagree on. Does that sound right?
I don't think it needs to be changed. I don't know if anybody wants changes to it, but
I'm not gonna make any changes to it, but I do hear what Ms. Johnson's saying, and I hear what you're saying, Mr. Guarino, but I think when you have your board member hat on, you should be following the ethical guidelines of voting with the information presented, not based on gifts or goods you've received.
right. And that's why I think it should be in there. I agree.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ms. Johnson, you're on mute.
No, that's okay. I was just talking to the dog. Yeah, the
Probably a
dog,
good-
my
it's probably a
dog,
good
my
conversation.
son's dog is here
Dog,
asking,
the
what are you
dog agrees
doing?
it stays in it.
The dog is good.
Yeah.
The dog's good. Bipartisan, you know?
Right. Bipartisan, pause. You guys aren't even laughing at that. I am. Okay. Do we want to address anything else in BCA? We're good? Okay. So I am looking for, I'll make the motion. I move to accept.
Did you move to accept BCA? And I think you froze. Okay. I think your Zoom froze.
Ms. Bishop, you froze for a second. Mr. Guarino, do you want to make the motion while she's frozen?
My voice is back.
Okay, go ahead.
I made,
Please,
I don't know where you guys heard me up until I had other amazing things I said. I said I make a motion to accept policy BCA as amended.
I will second.
Okay,
Discussion, please.
sure.
I don't mind voting on this, but I would like to see the cleaned up copy. Just because there's so much, written all over everything for each one of them. And I think it should be cleaned up before you vote on it, just to make sure.
Well, I'm okay voting on it and sending it to the board, and we can cross-reference our notes with what's presented to us.
Well, the work really should be done in the committee to cross-reference and finish it up, just to make sure it's clean.
So, Ms. Bernardo, do you have the changes noted? I do, but, and I'm happy to share, send it to Ms. Bishop and Ms. Bernardo and Mr. Parker to make sure that it's what
I
everybody.
have the changes noted, and generally after the meetings, we go through it together, myself and Anthony, and we will also go back if we need additional assistance to the committee chairs as well.
Okay.
And then you get a clean copy of the amendments tonight when it moves forward to the board.
I'm okay with that. Ms. Johnson?
Okay,
I'm sorry, I didn't hear. What was she gonna do? She was gonna
Present the cleaned up copy for the full board.
yeah, okay.
And we're just going off of the notes that we took.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm gonna take roll. Ms. Bishop votes yes. Mr. Guarino,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
yes.
Okay. Motion passes, or a motion to go to the board passes. Let's just look at the addendum for it, which is what we sign, acknowledging we're going to change school board to Board of Ed ethics policy, right, Mr. Guarino?
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody want to talk about this for 3 hours? Okay. So I'm
Oh, go ahead.
sorry.
I was just going to ask Ms. Bishop, all we're doing is, I'm confused. All we're doing on that one is changing it to a signature page?
Yep.
Okay.
And changing school board to Board of Education.
Okay.
And you might want to put signature of president of Board of Education too, as opposed to school board chair. 'Cause isn't that the title?
Yeah. So board president.
Okay. So I move to accept BCAR as amended to go to the full board.
I will second.
Okay, discussion? No discussions? Okay, so Ms. Bishop votes yes. Mr. Guarino,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. It is 7:49. I feel like we probably are going to dissect the next two policies with as much vigor as we did the first one. So I move to put these on the next policy committee meeting, unless we need to address them now for some timely manner.
Second.
Well, Mr. Parker, do we need to address these now or can they wait?
They can wait.
Oh, good.
Oh, good.
I'm sorry.
Oh, talk about nothing, right out the window. No, I'm just kidding.
I know. I forgot I'm not on mute. I'm sorry.
Okay. How about, in regards to the next two, if Miss Brown and Miss Raymond want to come to the next one as well, we'll address them in the same way, which will be point by point. And I think we'll just try to move a little bit quicker in regards to the next two. So come prepared with your edits, which I'm sure we all did. Okay, so I motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Bishop votes yes. Mr. Guarino,
Yes.
Ms. Johnson.
Yes.
Okay, the meeting has been adjourned at 7:51. Thank you, Mr. Parker and Dr. McKinney, for coming and hanging out with us, Ms. Bernardo. We appreciate all of the work and help that you put into this, and